Hey, what's up, everyone? It's time for another edition of Ask Mike, and this time we're going to do a Tuesday edition of Ask Mike with our senior analyst, Mike Irwin. So let's get straight to our questions for this week. Our first one comes from Pat Boat, who asks, could you name two guys, one from basketball and one from football, that you were surprised they never had an NBA or NFL career?
You know, with football, I'd have to go all the way back to Bill Montgomery. He was what some people feel like the best quarterback in the history of Arkansas football. His record, and I got it here somewhere, 28-5 over 3 years.
Wow.
He was incredible. He was in the quarterback in that '69 Texas-Arkansas shootout. Here's what I remember about Bill Montgomery. I was in college at North Texas State when he was at Arkansas, the exact same years. And I had these two buddies that were big Razorback fans. They were both from Texas, but they were huge Arkansas fans. And every other week during the season for those 3 years, Arkansas would come into Texas and play a team like Texas Tech, SMU, TCU, Rice, and all those teams. They would always get up Saturday morning and go to those games. They had to drive all the way to Lubbock, all the way down to Houston. So they were talking about Bill Montgomery all the time. Yeah. All the time. And sometimes they'd be on TV and we would see them then. So I was convinced he was really good. And I saw the Texas-Arkansas shootout on television. So, I mean, he was absolutely incredible. He had a better career than Joe Ferguson. And Joe Ferguson was in the NFL for 17 years and threw for almost 30,000 yards. So it's hard for me to believe that Montgomery couldn't have at least had some time in the NFL, but he didn't. Now, I haven't talked to him about this, so I don't know. Maybe he just went, I don't want to do that. I don't know that they didn't look at him. I do know that he went straight into investment banking when he got out of college, and he made a lot of money doing that and has given money back to Arkansas over the years. So I'm not sure really what the deal was with the NFL, but to me, he had to be good enough. Somebody told me that he got a shoulder injury his senior year, and that might have had an effect. But again, I haven't talked to him about that, so I don't really know. The basketball player that surprised me that he was never in the NBA would have been Scotty Thurman. He was on that national championship team, hit the three-pointer that basically beat Duke, and he was on the next team, the next year, the '95 team that went to the championship game in Seattle. And he came out early with Corliss. Yeah. Now, Corliss ended up being a high draft choice, and Scotty Thurman, the word I always got was he had an agent that told him he would. Before he signed the agent, he was talking to the agent, and the agent said, hey, man, look, you can be a high draft choice. So he signed with the agent, came out early, and then didn't get drafted, had one tryout, didn't work. So he spent the next several years playing basketball in Southern Europe, and he was a very good player over there and did well and made a lot of money doing that. So it's hard for me to figure out why he didn't at least get some kind of shot in the NBA. Maybe if he'd come back for one more year, the word was always that he just wasn't quite defensively what he needed to be. But that's hard to believe. You can't play for Nolan Richardson if you don't play defense. Point. Yeah. So maybe if he'd have come back for his senior year, he would have gotten drafted and then gotten a better shot. But that's always surprised me that he didn't at least get a chance to play in the NBA.
Those are two good picks, though, right there. All right, Rob 4516 has our next question from Hogville and says, is there any part of Coach Pittman's job performance so far that you feel could be improved upon? I can't imagine anyone doing a better job getting the program back on track, but there's a reason I'm not the athletics director at the U of A.
You know, the only thing I can think of is something that we never thought about, but he corrected himself. When he was hired, there was a big deal about all the staff he hired, and he made these good choices. And then after 1 year, he turns around and one of those guys left on their own, Justin Stepp, the wide receivers coach. But he replaced 3 other coaches. And he pretty much said, look, I need better recruiters. Yeah. And he said all along, we can only improve this program so much with coaching. If we want to be at the top of the SEC West, which is the best division in college football, we're going to have better players. Yeah. And so that, to me, shows how serious he is about it, recruiting when after 1 year, he took a look at 3 of these coaches and what they'd done in recruiting and said, no, we got to replace you.
Yeah.
But he corrected that. It's not like a lot of us in the media were sitting around going, boy, this coaching staff doesn't recruit.
They weren't doing a good job at
it. Frankly, I was totally surprised when that happened. And he, like a lot of things with Coach Pittman, he's kind of ahead of the curve and just told us this. So he's kind of self-evaluated himself better than we've evaluated.
Right. And they've done so well recruiting, especially with all the restrictions that they've had to put up with. And
absolutely.
It looks like they're about to actually have official visits coming up. All those restrictions are going to.
Won't it?
Oh, man. I can't even imagine being a commit and having to make that decision without actually being on
I think
campus.
that's why we see so many people in the portal.
Yeah,
because they commit to school, go there, and then all of a sudden, I'm not where I want to be, and so I'm back in the portal after 1 year.
All right, our next question comes from Blood Red Hog, who says, if KJ is QB1, who do you see as the primary backup QB this year?
Well, based on the scrimmage on Saturday, it clearly looked like Malik Hornsby was number 2, and I mean, he was here last year. He played a little bit, so he's got an edge there. To me, watching Hornsby he threw the one long touchdown pass, which that's impressive, but he was real inconsistent, especially in the situational part of the scrimmage. That would be where they make it 4th or 3rd and 8, 3rd and 11, 3rd and 4, and you're supposed to get the first down, or sometimes they will put them down on the goal line and you got to figure out a way to score. And in that part of it, Hornsby threw a bunch of incompletions, including one in the end zone, which was only about 8 yards and went completely behind the receiver. And he was so frustrated, you could see him just kind of pound his helmet.
Yeah.
And so I don't think he had a very good day overall. Lucas Coley, who's the true freshman that we heard a lot about in recruiting, that came out early and gave up the spring semester of his senior year, and he's already on campus. He looked pretty good to me. He came in pretty early in the scrimmage and took the 2 offense and went on a consistent scoring drive of about 60, 70 yards against the 2 defense. And that's, to me, that's more impressive than throwing one play, one long pass, scoring, is if you can consistently move the chains.
Yeah.
So I was a little more impressed with him, but it's really too early to kind of evaluate that. Landon Rogers is another quarterback from Little Rock Parkview who is not here yet. He's still in school. He will graduate and then come in here in the summer. I'm anxious to look at him. I've said before, I always lean toward the taller quarterbacks, and he's 6'4", 6'5"-ish, got good speed. I think he's faster than Jefferson, and he's got a strong arm like Jefferson, but like Jefferson, he needs to be more accurate on the deep ball. So that's going to come in time. I don't think that he comes in that late and has any chance to be the starter. Could he be number 2? I don't know. I haven't seen him. But I think at some point, if they work with him, he might have a chance to be the quarterback of the future. And I say that just because of what I mentioned. He's tall. He's got a strong arm, and he can really run. We all saw what Felipe Franks meant to this team last year. And this is a tall guy with good quickness, not a speed burner, but he could run, and he could throw the deep ball. And that's really the pattern that Arkansas needs to look for. And it's one of the things that I think they've got to develop at some point.
Yeah, still just really early, though. And we haven't seen a whole lot, but that is great that you got to go check out that scrimmage and stuff, too. All right, our next question comes from Muskogee Hog fan, who says, Jalen Williams was signed as the number 2 defensive tackle in junior college ball, and no one has inquired about what progress he is making. And we need him to step up to replace Marshall. It seems strange that he hasn't been mentioned one way or another. What do you know about his progress so far?
Okay, like he mentioned, he's a JUCO transfer, so he's only been on campus since January.
Yeah.
So he's been through 1 week of spring football. I will admit, we'll plead guilty. All of the media, there wasn't a single question after that scrimmage asked about him, and I don't recall his numbers in the 90s, something like 98, something like that. I don't recall seeing him do anything that kind of caught my eye.
Right.
But Otis Kirk, who's always on top of things, last week in a Zoom was talking to Eric Gregory, who is a down lineman, a defensive lineman for Arkansas. And he did ask him about Jalen Williams, and I've got the quote somewhere. Here it is. Okay, I got it.
Oh, yeah.
Jalen is pretty good. He's going to be a great player for us also. Just coming in from where he is from JUCO, there's a lot of work to improve on, but overall he's going to be pretty good. He's going to be a great player for us. Well, there's a lot of that pretty good and then
Pretty
great
good,
player.
yeah.
So translate that. To me, what that's saying is right now he's just pretty good.
Yeah.
But in the future, he's going to be a really great player. So that sort of mirrors the question. And they are counting on him a lot. And the reason he's important, and a lot of other guys, is because the frustration that Barry Odom had last year was he wants a stronger pass rush. He wants guys coming all the time. But he didn't have the depth to rotate it in and out, and those guys got really tired a lot. And I think it affected them. So the more depth you have there, you don't want to just have 3 guys that can do that. You want to have 6 guys or 7 or 8 so you can rotate guys in and keep that pass rush going. So that's why Jalen Williams is important, and we will keep updating you on him.
Maybe we'll ask Sam Pittman another question about him.
If we get further into this and he starts doing things in the spring, believe me, we'll be talking about him.
Hey, you can also look for him today. Mike's actually going out to practice, so we'll see what happens.
I'll check him out. But I know I've got to look at his number again, but it's like 97, 98, something.
We've
like
got
that.
a roster somewhere around here. Super Hog 1959 is asking, the media has had at least some access to football practices and the scrimmages this year. What are your thoughts on the positives and negatives so far? And what positions have stood out and which ones appear to be lacking? What do you think would be realistic expectation for this year?
Well, first of all, let me address this at least some access. It's the best access we've had in years.
Yeah.
And what's been frustrating for me going all the way back to around the Houston Nut time is that, yes, they've allowed us to go to some springs, although with Morris, you didn't go to anything.
Right.
But some of those coaches allowed us to go to these spring scrimmages and would even allow the fans in there. They would not allow you to shoot anything but the warm-up period, about 15 minutes. If you're trying to do a story on the scrimmage like I am, and let's say that in this scrimmage the other day, and under the old rules, let's say that K.J. Jefferson threw 2 touchdown passes, and I'm talking about that in my story, but I'm showing warm-ups.
Yeah, it's like you have no video of it.
And it's like, I even, at another television station where I was working at the time, I got told, when you run video of warm-ups, but you're talking about the scrimmage, you have to explain to them that's not the real video. And I got into an argument with my boss over that. I said, fans are not that stupid.
Right.
If you're talking about throwing a touchdown pass, they know the video is a warm-up drill. But it was still frustrating not to be able to show what you were talking about.
Of course.
Well, with now, this year, we can actually show what happened because we were there. And so kudos to Sam Pittman. I think what a lot of coaches are doing these days in the spring is they don't want you to see their workouts because that's where they're really doing stuff. They don't want you to go to their scrimmages because that's where they're really showing their offense and their defense.
That too.
And then what they do in the spring game is they don't show anything. It's just all for show. They put some plays out there that they know will work, and it's called scripting for the fans.
Yeah.
And so you're getting a false picture of what's going on. And honestly, that's what happened in the 2 years under Morris.
Yeah.
We go to those spring games and we're looking at them and it's like, what? And then it's like nothing what you saw in the fall.
Yeah.
So I think, again, kudos to Sam Pittman for showing us the real stuff.
Yep.
He's Frank Broyles-like in that Broyles always believed if you just give the fans what they want to know about, they will be a lot better fans and more loyal to you than if you try to fool them. So I really like him. Now, as Pittman, now let's evaluate the scrimmage. I've already talked about the backup quarterbacks. K.J. Jefferson, a mix of good and bad. He threw another touchdown pass to Blake Kern in addition to the one he threw to Traylon Burks. That was good, but he took far too long, and Sam Pittman admitted this, trying to find receivers. He said he hadn't, at the time, he had not evaluated the video. So Coach Pittman said, I may change my mind after looking at the video. But, you know, KJ either couldn't see what was out there, didn't read it fast enough, receivers weren't getting open, he wasn't sure. But he spent too much time back there trying to find a receiver. In an SEC game, you don't get that much time. My problem with him in those situations, because I'm a guy that believes if you're back in the pocket and you've got your offensive line blocking for you, rather than running sideways and getting outside that pocket, if these guys are coming at you like this and they get properly pushed out to the side, your ability to run is straight up the middle. And that's where we see a lot of these schools like Ole Miss who have good running quarterbacks. That's where they make their yards. Jefferson was going too much left, too much right. Now, a big deal was made by one of the reporters in the Zoom afterward about all the sacks. There were like 7 or 8 of these things. And Pittman correctly pointed out that sacks in the spring don't mean anything because you're not trying, you don't want the quarterbacks hurt, so the referees blow a whistle when you touch them. Well, there was one where Jefferson did roll out to his left, and he had a clear path all the way to the goal line. I thought he was going to go all the way, 50 yards. Somebody touched him, and they blew the whistle. So that's a little bit misleading to say we had 8 sacks. You didn't have 8 sacks where you would tackle the quarterback to the ground. And so it did affect the quarterback's running ability a little bit. It stifled him somewhat. But I just felt like Jefferson, he threw 1 bad interception to 2 touchdown passes. That's a 2-to-1 ratio, which isn't horrible, but I just think he could have done better. And what I'm doing in that scrimmage is I'm evaluating him and comparing him to Felipe Franks.
Right.
Because Felipe Franks was a big reason why they came up out of the bottom of the SEC West and at least won 3 conference games last year. So how do they do better than that this year? Well, they can have a better running game and a lot of stuff like this, but their quarterback has to at least be close to what they had, and I'm not sure he will be. I'm not saying he won't, but after one scrimmage, there's a lot of work to be done there, basically with the quarterbacks running. Now, what did I see that was good? The offensive line is bigger. That's the Sam Pittman influence. They're bigger, they're stronger, and they're more physical, and honestly, they bullied the offensive line. Remember last year when they were trying to run the ball on first down and they get 1 yard or 2 yards, and so now it's 2nd and 9? And Coach Pittman kept complaining about the problem that causes with the play calling. In this scrimmage, they were getting 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 yards on first down. So now it changes everything and loads you up a little bit better. If you want to throw the ball on 3rd, 2nd, and 2, if it's incomplete, you can still run for a first down. So that's what I saw with the run game. Traylon Smith, who was the surprise last year with him at running back, he looks as good as ever. I mean, he's quick. He finds holes, scoots through there, gets 10 yards, 11 yards, 15 yards. He did a good job. Rocket Sanders, he's the JUCO transfer receiver that they moved to running back. Sam Pittman was really happy about him. He goes about 6'2", about 210, 215, so he's bigger, but he's also fast. He almost broke a couple of long ones, but he ran physical too. And he's off to a promising start. So the running game looked good. I've already mentioned the tight ends. Blake Kearns looked good. Kern looked good. Hudson Henry also looked good in that scrimmage. So the 2 tight ends are good. And I thought the secondary looked good. So the negatives are the quarterback, specifically KJ Jefferson, needs to throw better.
Still some room for improvement.
He's got to improve a lot. And the D-line got pushed around. So it's like everything in the spring. One thing looks good, it makes the other part look bad. So now I'm sure Barry Odom's going, we got to get more physical on the defensive front. And that's sort of my evaluation of the scrimmage.
All right, so our next question comes from Austin Hogg fan, who says, what a weekend for Razorback fans. I haven't been this excited for basketball since Nolan was here. So obviously ORU will be the darling of the Sweet 16 as a 15 seed. What do you see as the biggest obstacle to winning against Oral Roberts?
You know, normally in a situation like that, the biggest obstacle would be, number one, they're a mid-major. And you sometimes players overlook. I mean, I think the 2 teams that they beat overlooked them for sure to get them to the Sweet 16. So normally you'd be worried a little bit about that. And then also worried about the fact that you've already played them before and beat them. So how are you going to convince your players you can't beat them again if you don't do something? But that's not going to be the case with Eric Musselman, because everybody knows he game plans like crazy, and every game plan is different. And I promise you, he will totally throw aside that first game plan for Oral Roberts and say that's invalid because this is not the same team. They've got 5 days starting yesterday to sit there and work on a new game plan for Oral Roberts and work out up there. They don't have anything else to do.
It's true.
And he's going to have a totally different game plan based on the video that they've seen when they won those 2 NCAA tournament games. And everything is going to be geared toward stopping what they're doing right now and trying to score on them based on their defense right now. So that would be the biggest obstacle. I'm not saying Arkansas will win. I'm saying they will be prepared for this game. If they lose, it won't be because they're overlooking them or they're not prepared.
Yeah, I don't think we've really seen that happen with this team this season. So Lanny has our next question and wants to know, what was up with that CBS Sports bozo who insulted Coach Muss in the pregame analysis of the Texas Tech game? He acted like Muss was coaching in the tournament for the first time.
Yeah, I got this guy's name written down here somewhere. Let me see what his name was. Okay, yeah. His name was Todd Furman.
Yep.
And he's a CBS analyst. And basically what happened was he's evaluating the game, and he said that Chris Beard, Texas Tech's coach, had to be licking his chops for the chance to go up against Eric Musselman in Arkansas because there'd be such a coaching mismatch. And it showed several things to me. Number one, that he had no clue about Musselman.
Right.
Probably had no knowledge of what he did at Nevada, no knowledge that he'd been to the Sweet 16 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Clearly has no knowledge that Chris Beard and Eric Musselman are good friends and coach a very similar style, do heavy game planning, heavy into making adjustments during the game, and have often talked to each other before they played each other. And they played twice now. Tech beat them in Lubbock. Arkansas beat Tech in the NCAA tournament. So he showed a lack of understanding or knowledge of that, to say that. And then they brought him out again because Coach Musselman, here's what normally would happen if that happened to a typical coach.
Yeah.
He would get asked about it. Did you hear about this guy? And he'd go, I don't know anything about it. They don't want to get into
Brush it off.
Coach Musselman he's all into everything.
Roasted it.
And he just said, who is this guy? I've never heard of him. One thing I do know, he's never coached in a game. He's never called a timeout. He's never done this. He's never done, just roasted the guy.
Yeah, it was great.
So they bring him back out to answer this. CBS trots him back out to answer. It's like putting a guy, okay, you screwed up. Now what do you do? And instead of offering an apology, and what you should do in that situation is say, look, I didn't do my homework. This guy's a lot better coach than I thought. I was wrong. I apologize. He didn't do that. He issued one of those non-apology apologies. And what he ended up saying is, well, okay, I'll admit I was wrong given the circumstances, but if Texas Tech had made a couple of layups at the end of the game, the narrative would totally change toward me, which is absurd because you basically said that it was going to be a total mismatch.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is that even if what he suggested happened and Tech made those layups, and let's say they won by a point or two, how would that prove that Musselman was totally outclassed in that situation? It wouldn't. But I want to say something about this in defending this guy a little bit, because I know how these networks work and the people producing these shows. They want them to be controversial.
Oh, yeah.
And they're paying them to do that. And so they're told beforehand, if you can say anything really juicy, go ahead and say it. So they set him up to do this, and it backfired on him, and then they threw him under the bus and stuck him out there again to make him look stupid, and it's their fault. CBS Sports did this. They do it all the time. They've really gone downhill over the years. They used to be the best network for sports. In my opinion, they used to be better than ESPN. Now neither one of them are any good as far as journalism, as far as I'm concerned. And it's not because of the on-air people or the writers, it's because these crazy producers are just looking for controversy, and that's all they want. They don't care whether the guy looks bad or not.
Yeah.
It's just cool for people to be mad at him.
Well, see, I just think that when you're giving a prediction on a game, there's a difference between saying someone's going to lose, someone's going to win, and then insulting someone.
Sure.
And he completely insulted Eric Musselman
Which
for
CBS
no reason.
loved.
Yeah. And then he just doubled down on it instead of
And they loved that too.
fixing it.
If they can drag him back out again and make him look goofy again, that'll be fine with them. They're not the ones that have to sit there and look stupid. The guy that made that decision and told him to do all this stuff.
Well, hey, everyone knows his name now. You didn't know it really who he was before this. So
I
we
guess-
are talking about
I
him.
guess that's true.
All right, Blood Red Hog is back with another question and wants to know, is Hunter working on an extension and a pay raise for Eric Musselman?
Well, we're going to have a Zoom later
Yep.
in the day with him.
We're gonna ask him.
And you're going to get to ask him that question. I wish we could include his answer on this show, but
Yeah.
we're taping this before we do that. I would say that even though he hasn't addressed it, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
He was going to get that even if they lost the first game of the NCAA tournament. Now that they've gone to the Sweet 16, I think it's a bigger raise.
Yeah.
It's a better
I would think so too.
You know, is it enough? Is somebody going to come after him? It's possible.
Yeah.
We're not in Eric Musselman's head. We don't know how. The best I can tell you is he looks like he's really happy here. His wife's happy here.
Yep.
I don't think he wants to go anywhere else, and I do think Hunter Yurachek will do everything necessary to keep him.
Yep.
It's interesting. I was reading about this coaching. They're already talking about a coaching search at Indiana.
Yeah.
And they started, the thing I was looking at, the guy that's writing this is a beat writer that covers Indiana. And he listed all of these coaches and he threw in Chris Beard and Eric Musselman, and he acted like it's just a matter of the Indiana AD looking at this list and go, which one of these guys
yeah,
do I
I want
like?
that one.
And then he just gets it. And I'm pretty sure that neither one of those two coaches, Chris Beard
Yeah.
or Eric Musselman, would take that job. Indiana's not what it was. It's not the same job. It's a terrible rebuilding situation, and you're going to be under enormous pressure because basketball, it's called the Hoosier State. That's where the movie Hoosiers came from. They love basketball in that state, and it's got to be killing them that their once proud Indiana program is nothing right now, but it's not. And I don't think they'll get the coach that they necessarily want just because they tap the guy on the shoulder and go, do you want this job? Okay, we'll take it. So we'll see. We'll see if it works out.
I know everyone was worried about him leaving too, but it's like he's built such a great thing here at Arkansas so fast. Why would you want to leave when everyone here loves you right now?
And there's no way Yurachek's going to let him
No,
leave just
that
because he
too.
doesn't give him enough money.
Right, that's not going to happen. All right, Pork Soda says, I thought the women's team was poised to make a run. Guess not. What went wrong?
Well, what went
great
wrong was the last two games of the season.
Yeah.
They basically lost both games in a very similar fashion.
Yeah.
They looked like they weren't into either game. I think it was Ole Miss in the conference tournament. And wasn't a very good, Ole Miss didn't have a good season, but they looked like a totally different team against Arkansas. Wright State's a good team, but smaller than Arkansas, probably not overall as talented, but Arkansas just got out-rebounded, out-quicked. Arkansas, they made a lot of mental errors in that game
And
that
their
didn't make
shooting
much
was
sense.
just
And
off.
shooting was terrible. They still had a chance to win the game. They had a 1-point lead with maybe 30, 40 seconds left. Can't remember the name of the girl, but she made a steal at midcourt and then dribbled the ball off her foot. Just a lot of mental errors in that situation. The question is, what does it really mean? Well, Mike Neighbors, this was his fourth season at Arkansas. He had a dramatic improvement in year two from a losing record to a good team. And then 2 years ago, or last year, they won the SEC women's tournament by beating Texas A&M. But then they had COVID, right? So nothing happened after that.
I don't think they won the tournament.
They didn't win it.
They made it to the final.
Made
though.
it to the finals and got beat by South Carolina. That's right.
And they would have made it into the NCAA tournament
Would have made
if
it, but
it happened.
But they had COVID.
Yeah.
So now you're coming back this year and you've got a chance to go for the first time. It's his fourth year, finally back in the NCAA tournament. And they got there based on a lot of things. Their conference record was almost similar to, I think they won one less game but had the same number of losses. So it's kind of a wash between last year and this year in terms of your conference record. But you did have a better non-conference, more impressive non-conference because you beat those two top five teams in UConn and Baylor. So that was all good. So everything's still an improvement up to the last two games.
Exactly.
And then all of a sudden it's just like, doink.
It's like the SEC tournament, you know, they didn't need to win games to make it to the NCAA, so maybe it was a little, I don't know.
Maybe they had just a little bit too casual an attitude about it.
But the
and then
NCAA
you have that long layoff because of it. And so maybe that had a lot to do with it. It just was an uncharacteristic finish. To what had happened. So now I'm sure there are going to be some people going, well, wait a minute, didn't they go backwards this year? I don't think they went backwards. they just didn't jump forward as much as we thought maybe.
Yeah.
And only because of what happened right there at the end.
Yeah, I think I had someone on Twitter say that, that season was just all for nothing. And I don't agree with that.
Well, I mean, those 2 wins weren't not for, I mean, when you can beat 2 teams like that, it's not for nothing.
No.
It's just that for whatever reason, and you may have had the right answer there, they may have known they're in the NCAA tournament and didn't have that motivation they had the year before.
Yeah.
So you don't put as much effort into it, and then all of a sudden you lose a game you never thought you'd lose.
Yeah.
Then you've got that huge layoff.
Like 2 weeks or something.
And you still are pretty high seeded, so you've got this opponent that everybody thinks you should be able to beat, and they turn out to be fired up, and you just never responded.
I think Neighbors, after they lost in the SEC tournament, he said, in years past, we were the team that was the underdog, that was supposed to come out there and show everything we got, and now the tables are kind of turned. So disappointing nonetheless, but still an incredible season for that women's basketball team. All right, we've got one more question. Razorback Redneck says, college baseball is nuts. Supposedly teams use their best pitchers on Fridays. Arkansas gave up 16 runs to Bama on Friday, then held them to a total of 2 runs over the next 2 games. I'm scratching my head.
Well, it is a little weird, but it is college baseball.
Yeah.
And the first thing I would say about Alabama is that a lot of people around the country don't understand that that's a team that should be ranked, maybe in the top 10. They went 16-1 last year before COVID, 16-1. And this year, you put what they did last year together with this year, and they came to Fayetteville having won 30 of their last 34 games. And they're not ranked? Are you serious? And you look at what they did in that first game, you see their hitters. Those guys can hit home runs. They can hit. I like the way their batters, Arkansas could take a lesson from some of those guys. I saw one of those guys, Arkansas, I can't remember who the pitcher was, but they had somebody throwing 95, 96. He just choked up on his bat, short stroked it, and hit one over the fence. Arkansas's guys are trying to hit home runs with a full swing, going crazy. And so game 1 was really just Peyton Paulette right off the bat. I think it was in the 2nd inning. That thing went on forever. They gave up 10 runs maybe in that inning. He just couldn't find the strike zone. And Van Horn may have taken him out too soon, but then the bullpen didn't do much, except Patrick Wicklander came in mid-game and threw 5 in a 3rd innings and gave up 1 run, and that may end up getting him back into the starting rotation in place of Paulette. If that happens, then Paulette would become your long reliever. So there was one good thing that came out of that first game. The other good thing that came out of it is a lot of times when a team scores that many runs in a game, they just don't have anything left.
That's a good point.
Ran out of gas or something. But I really think that Arkansas's pitchers faced a gut check at that point. Arkansas had lost 3 in a row and were really in danger of a collapse against a good baseball team, and that pitching staff was tremendous. Zebulon Vermillion and Lyle Lockhart, the 2 starters in the Saturday game and the Sunday game, they went 12 2/3 inning as starters and gave up 1 run. That was impressive.
That's good.
And then Kevin Kopps, I think, went 3 1/3 or whatever and gave up 1 hit. So all of that was a good bounce back.
Right.
Now, I haven't looked at all the polls. I've seen one poll where Arkansas was number 1, another where they were number 2. But it's not a disaster. It wasn't just like you're thinking, some of these fans are thinking, oh, they're not even going to be in the top 10 because they lost 3 in a row. It's just baseball, and you've got to look at it. The way I look at it is they faced a real disaster and bounced back from it and won the series against a really good team, believe me.
And also not being ranked number 1 overall is not the end of the world for this team either. All right, that's going to do it for Ask Mike this week. For Mike Irwin, I'm Tara Talmadge. Guys, thanks so much for watching.